So, introduce myself. I'm Reverend Andy Lindley. This is Doug. Who are you, Doug?
I'm Douglas. I work with Youth with a Mission in York, and I've been kind of in the country working with YWAM for the last 15 years.
So we're sat in Southlands Methodist Church, and this is where our partnership's kind of developed. But I want to remember the story, if you like, between us. So I came here, I suppose, just over 2 years ago, and the church was struggling a little. The congregation was sort of low in numbers. The building, as we'll get to see, is a huge building, and we were losing money and facing closure. And they were looking for a new vision. And we explored various things that we might do. We explored the soft play centre. We explored just letting it more. But we felt we needed a way of building a community in this place because we weren't really getting to engage with anybody. Very few people even knew the church was open, and the church had been very brave. They'd done a survey, and they had some data, not much, but they had some data that suggested that people would have liked the place to be used, but they didn't really see it as being theirs at the time. So one of the visions we came up with and came through the survey was the people in this area were interested in art. So I had this a strong feeling, and it kind of grew with them that might be an opportunity for us. But not being an artist, at least in my own mind, really wasn't sure how to take that forward. And we have a prayer meeting in York, One Voice, where leaders of churches gather. And I guess my recollection is being there one morning, and we after a time of corporate prayer and music, we gather and we get into small groups, don't we? And I shared, I suppose, with a few people that God had given us this vision, but I wasn't sure how to take it forward. And that led me to you, didn't it? Yeah. Well, it led me to a couple of people, but Doug was certainly one of those. And you had a vision too.
Yeah.
So do you want to just share what your vision was?
Yeah. So I guess my story goes a little bit further, or a little back in time. I had been working in Leeds with YWAM. We started a team there, and a big part of the goal was to kind of figure out how do you engage with the arts? How do you is it possible to have a missional approach to it? And we were trying various different things. One of my friends rented studios, who was working with us also with YWAM. He rented the studios at East Street Arts in Chapeltown. And we were just playing around with stuff, and I think we got a lot of things wrong, but we did some really cool things also. And in kind of 2015, we via kind of different circumstances, we ended up moving back to York. And I think in that year, and coming back, one of the things we knew, we were like, okay, it's a smaller city. We knew that York had a lot of arts flavors to it. It's got the theatre, the performing arts is really big in the city. I don't think so much at that point, but I know in the previous times there was a huge open mic nights. The music scene was really big, and that actually there was a huge kind of visual arts community. But generally, it seemed always kind of more underground. Like it kind of came out during what's it called? Open studios.
Yeah.
My brain, but on a kind of day-to-day, it didn't feel like there was a lot. There were a few little pockets, but there wasn't like a huge amount of resources. So you knew that there were a lot of kind of visual artists out there, but you didn't know where they were until kind of open studios, and then what they did on a year to year, you just didn't know.
But I remember going along to open studios, and what I heard during that time was, because the art gallery in York was being refurbished, but we're still not going to get to show our stuff there.
Yeah.
Where is it that we get to show our stuff in York? Where do we get to be together? So, I was picking up those same undercurrents, although not as engaged with the community as you were.
Yeah. And so, and I think that when we were having worked with East Street Arts that set up studios in the city. I think they're just from kind of quite quickly on, we realized that there was a limited amount of studios in the city, because we were looking at would we get into a studio here, and we were like, there's limited studios, they're super expensive. One of the studios, which I won't name, like we just walked in and it just felt like it was oppressive, like it just felt dark. It just didn't feel like artists were valued. And I think this started myself, but also kind of our team on this process of going, okay, how do we be a blessing to artists in the city? We looked previously at the Burton Stone Lane primary. Could we turn that into an art studio, which kind of fell through? But there was this kind of lingering of, we want to do something with the artists in the city and provide studios, and realized actually there was quite a need for studios in the city. And, I'm just trying to remember years. I think, what was it, last year was 1918. So was it 17 even, or 18? I can't remember, but it was a few, I think it must have even been 17. There was, for me what started was there was a movement day event down in London, whatever year that was. And I just happened to be coming back on the train, and I ended up beside David Caswell, who's one of the church leaders in the city, and I was just sort of sharing, this is, what I want, and like we've struggled to find space. Do you know of anything in the city, because he's quite well connected, where there would be a good space that is underused and could possibly suit? And he said, I know Andy is taking on Southlands Studio. That building is huge, it's underused. There could be some real good potential there. And then I think in November of that year, or later on in November of that year, I approached, I had approached Andy and said, is, at a One Voice meeting, is there a possibility that building would be something of use? And I think you guys were like, it's kind of an old building, you won't like it.
Exactly. We got to the point of saying art would be good. And we've got a lot of unrealised space upstairs in this place. This room we're in was used as church, but there's a huge hall at the back. And I was looking at the back community centre and thinking, well, there's this upstairs gallery space. It's full of youth stuff, but we don't have any youth. But maybe that would be great space for community. Up above the church here, it used to be a two-height chapel. There was this kind of really derelict space, and it was unsafe, and it was 6 foot high in junk storage, special storage, bring and buy storage, that kind of stuff. And the roof's falling in a bit. Well, the plasterwork's falling in, and I just thought, gosh, to even begin, we're going to have to spend like £100,000 just to make it kind of habitable. So I discounted that. But I was kind of thought maybe for a few thousand we could do something over the other side. So I invite yourself and Dave, I think it was, friend Dave, to come and look. And that changed my thinking hugely, because your response was unexpected, to say the least. Yeah,
we just walked in and we were blown away. Having come from Leeds and seeing the Corn Exchange, like, if you've ever been there, it's beautiful. And we walked into the community center and it was just like, wow, the ironwork in this building, the lights in this building, the open bays, like it screamed art studios. And then we walked over to the attic, which was full at that point, and especially my friend Dave just walked in and he was like, this is the exact kind of place that I would want to work. This is stunning, I love it in here. And it was quite funny seeing the shift of, this really could work. Wow, okay, we weren't expecting this result, or this response.
You like the urban decay.
Yeah.
I remember we're really digging this urban decay motif you've got going on. It was like, we worked really hard to make this. Yeah, so despite the fact we had a kind of suspended ceiling covered in fiberglass and roof joists in the middle of the room, you saw the potential. Yeah. I couldn't see the potential, but you guys saw the potential. So that really changed our thinking from that point on. And it was still a big jump for us, because it was an idea from you, and we didn't know if it would work, and it was an idea from us, and it felt God had brought us together. But I still felt neither of us really had a kind of foothold in the artistic kind of community here, I guess, and didn't have a. Where do we start? Where do we build the confidence that this can be done? And for me, that's where Colin and Seek came in. So another person I shared with at a prayer meeting called Phil, part of St. Mike the Belfry. He said, "Oh, I've got a good friend coming down who's an artist. He's a Christian artist. He would probably really keen to be involved." That was as much as he told me. So I just thought, well, if I get one artist on board, that would be great. Doug is an artist, but he's got other things on his plate as well. It turned out that Colin came down with a vision for setting up an art school. He'd been part of Leith School of Art, he'd been a senior tutor there, and God had laid on him to set up an art school in York, but again, a bit like Doug, he had a vision but not a building. So we partnered with Colin and Seek, as it became Seek Art School, and they began to offer workshops, and we made some space for them. We had to turf out the guides and the brownies upstairs, which was a bit stressful. All their stuff had to be moved upstairs, and they began, and our conversation was fruitful. The church were excited. You came and preached, didn't you? You came and shared, and so
I don't know if preach is the right word. I think share was more.
You came and shared, but they were enthusiastic about working with you. And so we got going, didn't we? We put together a plan which the Methodist Church funded for, I think it was about 20,000 in the end, to put in mains, because there's no mains up there, there's no lights up there. We had to make it safe, and we put in some, I would call them kind of stables.
Yeah.
Kind of just divided the space off. We began in the community centre where we both could see it happening, didn't we? And you. Yeah.
Because I think it took us about a year to get going, and I think one of the beautifulness of this situation was the church was in a position where it needed to change or it would go under, kind of thing, and that in some ways really was the fuel that sparked the change. So from an outside perspective, in a year basically, the amount of shifting that had to happen in this church in order to start thinking through we're going to be different was kind of astronomical in some ways, especially for an older generation of congregational people. And but in there, I think it really did lay a groundwork for seeds to be sown, and kind of the next summer, through, I think it was you with Donna, an opportunity arose where someone needed a studio, because all of a sudden it was like a kind of a perfect storm for us, where all this temporary studios started saying we're going to be closing soon, and there was this plethora of artists going, we're in a panic, we need studios, and kind of through word of mouth, instantly we'd filled up the whole community center studios, which wasn't much, it was 3, but we had, what was it, 1, 2, 3, there was 7 of us, I think, filled within kind of 2 to 3 months, and within the next month we were up to about a 14, 15 person waiting list, which then was more than enough of kind of fire to get the attic started for next year.
Yeah. It was kind of slow. I mean, we were ripping out seats and things that were built in to make the spaces work between us. We literally sledgehammering stuff out and taking it to the dump. And there was a lot of wrestling with the church congregation. Those who invested in the youth stuff, getting rid of the pool table, getting rid of the snooker table, bringing the snooker table down into the church. That was a big one. That took a little bit of wrestling. And actually, we're sitting in the church that's the other way around than it was. So we actually rotated the church 180 degrees to make space for a kind of new space at the back. And you'll see later in the video there's some artwork that started appearing. As soon as artists appearing, artwork began to appear on the wall. But it wasn't straightforward by any means. There were small steps and there were big sacrifices, because people saw the ministry they had and had hung on to and had flourished for years was being almost thrown away. The potential for repicking it up was disappearing, and that was difficult. But there was real excitement about the art community forming. But there was something missing for me, and that was that we were kind of having an art community, and you were kind of forming that,
Yeah.
and we were communicating well, and there's one or two of the stewards kind of came alongside me and part of the team, but we weren't getting church folk meeting with artists. So two communities in one building, not much overlap. Seek doing their workshops, but again we didn't see Seek very often.
Yeah, they were much more independent.
They're very independent. So though we had people using workshops, we still weren't engaging. I think it began to change with open studios. So we talked about open studios being a place where the recognition of the need came about. But actually we then got 5 of the art, was 3 artists. So Seek and Donna, 3 artists I think signed up for Open Studios the following year and were successful. And so Open Studios was in the church.
Yeah.
And that was a game changer, I think.
Especially for the church. I don't know so much for the studios it was a game changer, but I think for the mentality of the church it was definitely, it changed everything because, what was it, they saw 1,200 people come in over 2 weekends.
Yeah.
And it was phenomenal for them.
And people who thought the building was closed
Yeah.
were kind of, okay, this is interesting. Or, I haven't been in here for 20 years and it's interesting to see what you're doing. And we took people on tours, didn't we?
Yeah.
Of the derelict upstairs and shared the vision.
Yeah. Which was, at that point, was still, I think, they were starting to be filled.
We just kind of cleared the space. Maybe we had 1 or 2 people in.
I think we had a few, yeah.
But largely it was just a void, wasn't it? But yeah, the vision. And I think people began to say, hey, it wasn't just we had 1,200 people through. We had some great conversations with people. And we connected with people we haven't seen in a while. And there was 1 or 2 people started coming to the church. I have to say, a few people left the church in this process. Especially when I brought the sofas in and I twisted the church 180 degrees, a few people couldn't cope with the level of change, but others were thrilled and really were enjoying the fact that we were engaging with people, that we had a life, we had something to offer our community. So it was good. Yeah, and I guess we moved on from there. I guess it was only this last 6 months we got finally full. Is it longer than that now? Maybe.
No, it's been longer than that.
Gosh, time flies. Yeah. So we are full, and we still have a waiting list of kind of half a dozen.
Yeah, probably. And probably more now.
Probably more. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, my summary of the story is kind of if God's got something on His mind, He kind of gets people together, and anything can happen.
I think one of the things that I think, looking back as I've been evaluating this, especially as I look to move to something new, is kind of what has made this work so well. And we had an organization approach called Planet Food, where they would do community lunches using food from grocery stores that go to waste. And I think having the church was great because you have that kind of spiritual development that's a part of it. But then you have the artists, which kind of add this kind of, I don't know if chaotic is right, but it adds this kind of out there dimension to it. But you still, like you said, there was nothing that kind of brought everybody together. Yeah. And so with Planet Food, all of a sudden now, once a week, you have the hall opened up, the community hall opened up, where, I don't even know, 70, 80 people come on a morning.
Perhaps more, yeah.
And they eat, and there's chairs, and you end up on tables with different people, and there's this kind of cross-pollination that happens there. But it also is this kind of space where actually people, and I think partly because of the art studios, there is my guess, is there is this, it feels like it's a safe space for people. And
it's what I knew we needed something, and the trouble was the church just didn't have the bandwidth to do anything. It just didn't have the people we had some people who were good at catering and hospitality, but not weekly and not on the scale that Planet Food offered. So it really was an answer to prayer for us. It's been a fabulous partnership, and it's a third space, I think the pioneer people call it, where it's a creative, safe environment and spiritual conversations happen. and we encounter people. I love the fact, because it's waste food, but there is also a stall of kind of waste food that you can come and get a shopping bag full for £1. I love the fact that there are people there because they haven't got enough to make ends meet, and there are people there who are passionate about the environment and just don't want to waste food. And they may be quite wealthy, but they come and do it for that reason. And you don't know who's who.
Yeah.
And then the artists have made that their kind of weekly gathering point, and they come and have lunch. So we have this beautiful melting pot of church folk and their partners, spouses sometimes that aren't part of the church will come along. People who just in the community are drawn to it as a lovely gathering spot. There's people who have meetings here because it's a good place to meet. And the council are in, sharing their services, and the part of the council are involved in the group, and the local councillors. It's just a beautiful thing, and the beauty of that is from this melting pot of people that then came a call, well, we could do with using that derelict space next to the church that's just a wasteland. And to be honest, when I arrived, the church had a vision for developing that as a community garden, and I vetoed it because there's a gorgeous public park like 100 yards away that is just fabulous, and I just couldn't see we could compete. But so we kind of put that on hold, and it's sat there and sat there.
And then all the artists started going, okay, this looks awful. We all like our aesthetics to be a little bit better. Can we at least cut the grass or something?
Yeah.
It looks like a tundra.
Well, and Planet Food were saying, well, why don't we grow some veggies in that space? And then a local homeless charity said, well, we would love a space where we can bring some people. And before long, we had 3 or 4 partners kind of going, we could transform that and we could use that. And so that's the next step, that we're in the process of changing the garden. So I just thank God from the small seeds that we both had of a vision where we didn't know where to go with it together. And I love the idea of God working with pairs of people. Jesus sent out the disciples in pairs, and
but even there has been, and even that, like, we might have been the initial 2, but actually there has been an ever-expanding kind of collaboration of people in groups, and it's amazing to see how it's more than just the church, it's more than just the studios, it's more than just Planet Food. Actually, there is this kind of community hub that's formed that is a lot of people are a part of.
Yeah. And it brings issues, like we can't park everybody, the constant refrain, you can't park, we're busy, we need more caretaking, but wonderful issues.
Yeah.
But this is a church that's wrestling with growing pains, not death pains. And so thank you for being part of this, and we wish you well on your journey on into America.
Yeah.